HOA Karen cut my grandma's hair without asking. She didn't know grandma's the mayor's mother. Part 1. I didn't even hear the scissors at first. Just the rustle of hydrangea leaves in the breeze and my grandma humming, "Ain't no mountain high enough" from her porch rocker. That porch was her kingdom. Always had been. Her throne an old white rocking chair, passed down 3 generations. Her scepter a mason jar full of sweet tea. Her crown that thick, silver hair coiled, braided, combed with pride. Until Karen came by. Until the scissors came out. Until I heard that sharp snip and my grandma's hum caught in her throat. Let me back up. My name is Kelsey Evans, 26 years old, freelance videographer, part-time barista, full-time defender of the people I love. I moved in with my grandma, Mary Louise Evans. After I left grad school and realized entry-level jobs required 5 years of experience and zero joy, she gave me a room, fresh cornbread every Thursday, and a front row seat to what grace looked like. Everyone knew Grandma Evans. She was 74, sharp as a switchblade, always wore blue and knew how to gut a fish, build a garden bed, and memorize poetry. She was also, as the town gossips like to whisper, the mother of her, the capital H, her who ran the city. But Grandma never bragged. She just said, "Baby, it's my job to raise them strong. If they end up powerful, that's on God." We lived in Crestwood Hills, a gated community with more rules than common sense. Every lawn had to be cut a certain way. Every porch needed neutral tone decor, no wind chimes, no visible laundry, no more than 2 potted plants, and don't even get me started on the HOA president, Karen Jeffries. Blonde, sharp, concerned, the kind of woman who said bless your heart when she really meant know your place. She wore her fake authority like a pageant sash, HOA chairwoman, printed in sparkly script across her clipboard. She hated my grandma from the moment we moved in. Maybe it was the rocking chair. Maybe it was the hair. Maybe it was that grandma never bowed to anyone who didn't earn it. It started small. Karen left notes taped to our door. Porch plant overgrown. Unapproved chair cushion. Bird feeder too whimsical. We laughed. Grandma said, "Let her spend her life shrinking joy. I got more important things to grow." But then came the newsletter. Then the new appearance compliance memo. Then the photos. Karen took a picture of Grandma, sitting on her porch, reading the paper. The caption underneath "example of non-standard hair presentation detracts from cohesive community aesthetic." I wanted to scream. Grandma just raised an eyebrow. "Baby," she said, "this ain't new." But what happened next, that was new. That was violence. It was Thursday morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard the rocking chair creak stop. Then a voice sharp, nasal, rehearsed. "Mrs. Evans, I've spoken to you 3 times. You know the HOA appearance standards. That includes visible presentation." Grandma's voice was even. "My hair ain't hurting nobody, Miss Jeffries, but it sets a tone of freedom, a tone of defiance." Then the worst sound I've ever heard, snip, followed by a gasp, then silence, then my name, Kelsey, small, shaking. I ran out barefoot, and there she was, Karen, holding scissors, silver strands clutched in her other hand like they were trash to be bagged and disposed of. And my grandma still in her rocker, hands in her lap, eyes wide and full of something I'd never seen before. Not fear, not sadness, just betrayal, the kind that bleeds quietly. "What the hell did you do?" I screamed. Karen looked startled just for a moment, then snapped back, stiff and self-righteous. She violated visual cohesion. I performed a corrective action. I stepped forward. "You cut her hair." I enforced HOA Standard 6.2 on outdoor visibility and uniform grooming. Her braid was excessive and non-conforming. I looked at the strands in her hand. They were still warm from the sun, still glowing, like silk, like pride, and Karen had butchered them. I didn't cry. I recorded. I pulled out my phone and hit video, because if I'd screamed, it would have been dismissed. But a video that would be justice, in the footage. Karen says it all again. Corrective action, excessive hair, visual standard. Then my grandma stands up, slow, composed, still regal, and she says, "You put scissors in my hair without my consent. You humiliated me in front of my home. You forgot one thing. Ms. Jeffries, I may be an old black woman on a porch, but I'm also the mother of this city's mayor. And you just started a fire you can't put out." We uploaded the video, no hashtags, just truth. It hit 2,000 views in 1 hour. By noon, 20,000. By the end of the day, over 500,000. People lost their minds. The comments exploded. "This is assault. Karen should be arrested. Imagine touching a black woman's hair without consent, let alone cutting it. The mayor's mother, she's done." But it wasn't the internet that changed everything. It was the woman who walked up our steps that night, dressed in navy, jaw clenched, heels clicking like thunder. My mother, the mayor. She hugged Grandma, then turned to me. Her eyes burned like headlights in a storm. "Did you get her on video? I got everything." "Good," she said, "because tomorrow we're going to shut down this whole damn circus." Part 2. By sunrise the next morning, the porch was quiet, no rocking, no humming, no sweet tea, just my grandma sitting still, her braid uneven and shorter than I'd ever seen it in my life. The ends frayed, the damage real. She didn't speak much that morning. She just kept touching the side of her head like it was both unfamiliar and sacred at the same time. I asked if she wanted to cancel the press conference. She shook her head once. "Baby, if they see me cry, they'll forget what she did and only remember how I looked. So I won't give them that." At 9:00, we pulled up to City Hall. Mayor Evans, my mother, was already waiting at the steps in a navy dress suit, heels sharp, face unreadable. Two of her aides flanked her, holding clipboards and water bottles. She didn't need them. She needed fire. The media was already circling like bees. Local news, regional reporters. Even a stringer from CNN had shown up after the video passed 1.2 million views overnight. The podium was simple, no seal, no flags, just a mic and a speaker that worked. And my grandma. When she stepped forward, the crowd hushed. She wore the same blue dress she always wore to Sunday service, the one with white flowers at the hem, but the real statement was the half braid still hanging down her left shoulder, cut midway, loose strands frizzing, fraying, the other half neatly rebraided by hand. She let both hang like a wound and a warning. She didn't read from notes. She didn't shout. She just said, "My name is Mary Louise Evans. I am 74 years old. I have lived in this city longer than most of you have been breathing. I raised 3 children here. I taught Sunday school. I volunteered. I voted. And yesterday, I was assaulted on my own porch by a woman with a clipboard and scissors because she didn't like the way I wore my hair. She said it disrupted the neighborhood. But what really disrupted this neighborhood is what lives in her heart. Not my braid, not my skin, not my chair. Her hate. That's the real eyesore. People didn't clap. They just stood there, quiet, moved, shaken. And then my mother, the mayor, took the mic. "As mayor of this city, I am disgusted. As a daughter, I am devastated. And as a public servant, I promise you this: the woman who assaulted my mother will face legal action. The HOA that allowed her to rise unchecked will be audited. And any neighborhood group operating under the false belief that they have a right to police identity, culture, or aging will be disbanded." She turned, looked straight into the cameras. "Let me be very clear. You do not have the right to touch anyone without consent. You do not have the right to define what is neat. You do not have the right to cut someone else down literally or metaphorically because of your discomfort. If your HOA is weaponizing its rules, it will be dismantled. And if you think you can lay hands on my mother again, try me." The room erupted, not in applause, but something bigger. Affirmation. Rage turned righteous. Karen didn't show her face that day, but her name trended by noon. Scissor Karen, sure, braid assault. Mayor Mama Justice. By 4 EURP. The city attorney's office confirmed Karen Jeffries was being charged with misdemeanor assault. A civil suit was being prepared by the Evans family. An emergency injunction had been filed against the Crestwood Hills HOA board. Karen released a statement via email to the press. I acted in accordance with the HOA visual standards. I regret that Mrs. Evans misunderstood my intent. That single sentence became the most quoted non-apology of the year. By that evening, protesters had gathered outside Crestwood's gates. Some held signs. Others simply carried scissors dangling from their fingers like a message. A news crew tried to get a quote from Karen. She refused, but her husband answered the door, pale and flustered. She's not talking. Just leave us alone. It was a haircut. It wasn't that deep. And that's when my grandma, from her porch, replied live on the local station. It was my hair. So it was exactly that deep. Meanwhile, with the audit of the HOA uncovered a goldmine of corruption, over 80 citations issued in the last 2 years for visual noncompliance. 90% were issued to Black, elderly, or immigrant residents. Nearly $45,000 in fines collected, most without formal documentation. Karen had no actual license or enforcement authority. She had simply appointed herself the role, and no one had stopped her. Until now, the city moved quickly. An emergency council vote stripped Crestwood Hills HOA of its charter. A new oversight board was formed, diverse, verified, and elected. The first order of business, a complete repeal of appearance clauses involving personal expression, porch decor, and hairstyles. The second, a public apology printed and mailed to every resident. Karen resigned from the neighborhood association, then from her PTA post, then from her volunteer committee, and then, finally, from the community. She moved out 2 weeks later. Someone caught her U-Haul pulling out of the driveway, posted the video with the caption, "Scissors packed, justice delivered." But even after she left, the work wasn't done. Because this wasn't about just one haircut. This was about the silent war so many people, especially women of color, have fought on their porches, in their schools, in their jobs. The war to be seen, the war to be left alone. A few weeks later, my grandma's story reached Capitol Hill. A senator read her words into the congressional record. Laws were proposed to regulate HOA conduct nationwide. A bill nicknamed Mary Louise's Law passed committee. It would criminalize physical enforcement actions by non-law officers, prohibit HOA citations based on cultural or personal expression, establish federal oversight on neighborhood associations. Grandma just shook her head when we told her. All I wanted was to finish my tea, and now she does, on a brand new porch, with a city seal hand-carved into her new rocking chair, a gift from the community. As for the braid, it's growing back, slower than before, but stronger, just like her. Part 3. The first time Grandma heard her name read aloud on the Senate floor. She didn't blink. She was shelling peas at the kitchen table, humming softly, wearing the same blue apron she always wore when she wanted to keep her hands busy and her mind clear. I ran in from the living room, nearly tripping on the rug. "Grandma, it's you." On CS-PAN. She smiled faintly. They still pronouncing it right. They said it 3 times already. She gave a small nod and kept shelling. "You nervous?" "No, baby," and she said, "because now they can't say they didn't know. Now, it's in the record." Mary Louise's Law passed in the House by a sweeping majority and cleared the Senate floor in early fall. The law established, on a national level, a ban on unauthorized physical compliance actions by HOA members. The classification of race-based, age-based, or cultural appearance targeting as civil rights violations, the requirement for state-level registration and training for all HOA officers, including oversight and anti-discrimination modules, a hotline and digital portal for residents to report abuse named Porch Watch. President Chandler signed the bill into law on the front steps of a historic home in Atlanta. When he stepped to the mic, he didn't quote legal jargon. He quoted Grandma. "You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to stay rooted where they thought you'd never grow." Grandma didn't attend the signing ceremony. She said she had peas to finish, but she sent a letter, typed, one page. It read, "This wasn't about me. It was about a woman like me 5 states over who doesn't have a mayor for a daughter. It was about the old men getting fined for sitting in plastic chairs. It was about the little girls getting their braids called unruly. It was about every porch that was treated like a courtroom. Now, maybe, we've turned those steps into something else, a place where people can sit and be." The letter was printed in full in the New York Times. A photo of the porch followed a side angle of Grandma's profile in her chair. Sunlight pouring across the wooden floorboards, her regrowing braid tucked behind her ear, a new piece in her face. Underneath, the caption read, "She didn't shout, she sat." Meanwhile, Crestwood Hills changed completely. After Karen moved, the new board diverse, restructured, and closely monitored eliminated all subjective appearance policies. They replaced the old HOA charter with something revolutionary. A community agreement built on respect, not restriction. No more fines for wind chimes, porch rocking, or excessive personality. No more fake authority. No more clipboards with God complexes. Instead, they offered monthly neighborhood potlucks, community gardening programs, porch portrait days where residents had their front steps photographed for a collage titled, "This is what belonging looks like." Grandma didn't just become the spark. She became the standard. People sent her letters from Alabama, Oregon, Connecticut, HOA victims, porch dwellers, church elders, queer youth. Some wrote in cursive, some in shaky print. Some just sent postcards that said, "You gave me permission. I made my porch mine again. She cut you down, and you stood taller." Then came the portrait project. It started with a photographer in Mississippi who wanted to document America's porches of resistance. He asked Grandma to be the first. She said yes, but only if the chair got to be in it too. He captured her sitting in the late afternoon sun, with her new braid thickening over her left shoulder and her hands folded gently across her lap. It became the cover image for a traveling exhibit titled "The Front Step Where Dignity Lives." The exhibit toured 20 cities. At each stop, people walked in silently and left crying. They saw church ladies with curlers, veterans with canes, artists with rainbow railings, Muslim families in rocking chairs, trans teens in porch swings. It wasn't just about Grandma anymore. It was about them all. Karen, she tried to sue for defamation. The case was thrown out in 2 minutes. She relocated again, this time out of state. A journalist tracked her down once and asked if she regretted the haircut. Karen stared blankly and said, "It was about neighborhood standards." People blew it out of proportion. That quote landed on a t-shirt, beneath it a pair of scissors crossed out in red. Back home, Grandma just kept rocking. She planted herbs by the porch, hung a bird feeder, even added a new pillow to her chair embroidered with a quote, "I was raised to let people be." She got it from her own mama. The most surprising letter came from a middle school girl in Detroit. It was handwritten, with stickers of suns and cats in the margins. "Hi, I'm writing because my principal said my afro was a distraction and told me to tie it back. But I saw your picture and told him no. My mama said I could be suspended, but I wasn't, because some people stood with me, because of you. So thanks. I like my hair now." Grandma didn't frame it. She put it in her Bible, right between Psalms and Proverbs. Then one morning, my grandma asked me something strange. She said, "Do you think Karen still thinks she was right?" I hesitated. "I don't know." She nodded. "That's okay," she said. "I didn't survive this long waiting on apologies. I survived making sure they were no longer needed." People started asking if we'd write a book. Grandma refused. "Let them read the porch," she said. "It says everything." She didn't become a politician, didn't run for office, didn't start a nonprofit. She just stayed in her chair as herself. And sometimes, staying is the loudest form of defiance there is. Part 4. It started with the braid, not the one Karen cut. That one would never come back exactly the same. But the one that grew after, it was fuller now, thicker, the strands grayer, sure but stronger, wiser, like the kind of tree that gets bent in the wind but roots deeper every time it's tested. Grandma started braiding her hair every Sunday again. She did it slowly, deliberately, like she was stitching something back into place: history, pride, maybe even healing. And as that braid grew back, so did something else: hope. People didn't just watch her story anymore. They built from it. The first change came from the high school in our town. After Grandma's story went national, a group of students led a movement to change the school's outdated dress code. It had banned unnatural hairstyles, overly large accessories, and anything that drew undue attention. Sounded harmless on paper. Until you saw it in action: black girls sent home for head wraps, Sikh boys fined for wearing traditional turbans, kids with disabilities told to remove noise-canceling headphones. So they rewrote it, line by line, with Grandma's words printed on the first page. You don't have to disappear to be allowed. They called it the Evans Standard. The school board passed it unanimously. Next came the city mural. It was painted on the community center wall where seniors did water aerobics and bingo tournaments. At first, people were skeptical. Why put a porch on a wall? But when it was finished, the mural stretched 60 feet wide, full of chairs, faces, steps, shoes, teacups, braids, beads, smiles, walkers, canes, and a rocking chair painted gold. In the middle, Grandma, not smiling, not angry, just sitting, with dignity drawn into every wrinkle. The mural's caption read, "She sat, so we could stand." People came from miles around just to see it, take photos, leave notes. One kid slipped a letter into the planter below. "My grandma never got to say no, but yours did. Thanks for that." Grandma kept every note, not to show off, but to remember who she was sitting for. Around then, my mom, the mayor, pushed for statewide legislation and won. The Personal Sovereignty and Shared Spaces Act became law, mandating strict limits on HOA power over personal appearance, criminal charges for any physical correction attempts, legal recognition of porches, stoops, and balconies as protected extensions of personal property, training programs for HOA boards in cultural sensitivity, anti-discrimination, and constitutional compliance. People called it radical. Grandma called it common sense finally catching up. But what hit hardest came later. I was teaching a media literacy workshop at a youth center in another town when a quiet teenager raised his hand. He asked, "Do you think anyone would have cared if she wasn't the mayor's mom?" The room went still, and I told the truth. Maybe not. Not at first, but someone had to be first. So the next time, it doesn't matter who your mama is. It just matters that you're you. He nodded slowly, and I knew we were winning, not all at once, but brick by brick, porch by porch, person by person. Back home, Grandma turned 75 that winter. We threw her a party on her porch. The entire street showed up, people who used to turn away, now bringing casseroles, hugging tight, asking how she liked her bird feeder. She wore blue, and of course, and her braid wrapped across her crown like a quiet tiara. Someone asked her to say a few words. She just tapped her teacup and said, "Y'all took your sweet time, but I'm glad you made it." That spring, a young woman knocked on our door. She had the same thick curls Grandma once had and scars along her left temple. "I heard about your story," she said. "I got forced to cut mine in college. I'm only now growing it back. I didn't think I could." Grandma smiled, then sat her down and started braiding. Softly, slowly, like she was restoring something, like she was blessing it. She did it again and again. Eventually, word got out. People didn't come to our porch for statements anymore. They came for healing, one braid at a time. We added a small sign to the porch steps: haircuts by consent only, braids by love. Karen's name stopped being whispered after a while. People remembered the act, not the actor, but they never forgot the scissors. Grandma kept them, hung them in a shadow box above the fireplace with a small plaque. She thought she was cutting me down, but all she did was prune me. And baby, you should see how I've grown. At night, sometimes I sat on that porch alone, thinking, rocking in the chair next to hers, and I realized what she'd known all along, that this fight was never just about rules. It was about worth, about deciding who gets to be fully, freely, without apology. And what she proved sitting there with one half of her braid sliced and the other half defiant was that worth can't be voted on. It can only be declared, lived, and protected. The porch is quiet again these days, but it's never empty because something changed, not just here, everywhere. Porches aren't shrinking anymore. They're blooming, with flags, with plants, with pride, with people, and yes, with braids. Always with braids. The end.